It's light, but I can hear you.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Snag Talk Live. Sorry for the delay. Some technical difficulties tonight.
Issues.
I am the coach along with Lone Wolf, and we are continuing our NFL draft primer and a couple of other things we'll touch on here before we get into that real quick. Um, you sent me that article about Major League Baseball's plan um, to possibly try to get their season started.
Yep.
Uh,
Just saw that today.
I, 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 I don't know if I'm a fan of that.
Yeah.
You know, I know everybody wants to get going and get things started. Um, the issue I have with this is that you you know we still don't know what really is going on with this whole thing. Um, and
Exactly.
and even putting players in stadiums without fans or limited access, I really think you're opening it up for possible issues because we don't know the gravity of it. If depending on what you look at, it looks like things are starting to, we're hitting that the peak here, and it should start getting better here soon. And because of that, I'd just say everybody, let's just hold on. You know,
Right. Exactly.
I don't think I think if anything, you just cut your games. You know, take look at where you're at. Say this is when we feasibly can get everything going, and we just cut those games out of our season, um, and move forward. Uh, you know, I don't know if we can sit here and expect to get 162 baseball games in this year.
I really
Uh,
honestly don't think that that's going to be possible. I know what they're trying to do and people want sports again, but I just don't see this as being it's just, you canceled it or you delayed it for a reason. You see what it looks like right now. Even if things would be better in another month, I don't know that it'd be ready to get rolling again in a month. I mean, it's probably going to be more like a month and a half or maybe even 2 months. So you might want to think about, yeah, they want to do it in a controlled environment. But I still think it's just too soon, I think, for that.
right, and I read a couple of things, and they didn't really hint on whether you know what the NBA is looking at right now. But there are
Yeah.
already people talking about free agency for basketball. It's like, well, I think you'd have a lot of upset franchises if you just said no, we're done. Um,
Yeah. And they're in a different boat, right? I mean, they had the majority of their season done. You have
right.
clear cut teams that you could put in the playoffs. I'm sorry to those teams who are on the bubble who had a chance, but for this year, I think you're just going to have to deal with it and you're going to have to move on. And they're just going to seed the teams based on their records right now and have a playoff based on that. I think that's the best thing that they can do. Yeah, they could scrap it all together, but I think people want the playoffs. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, I don't see how your league holds on to fans if you just scrap the season. Like
Yeah,
I said before, especially now with the Olympics not an issue in the summer, you're not going to compete with them. You
right,
have time because the only thing you have to compete with in like July is NFL training camp. And
right.
to be honest, you know, the football is the one thing I follow, but
Yeah,
you're not gonna pull away or lose your diehard fans to NFL training camp. You're
no,
just not going
no.
to. So, um, I think we just let this play out. I am optimistic from a coach's standpoint. You know, within a month we'll start to open things up again here.
Right.
So I think we'll be okay. I think we just all need to. I know we're all getting cabin fever. We're all getting kind of punchy with stuff. We want to get things going, but at the same
Right.
time, um, don't rush it. Don't rush it with a bad idea. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
it's just one of
and
those
that's
things. I
just
think.
it. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do again, like we said, but you really don't want to. I mean, if you put it out there, it means you've already explored the option, and now you're thinking about actually doing it. I think you got to go back to the drawing board on this one a little bit and think about it a little bit more before you just say that or that you're going to try and do it. It's just a little too soon for that. We were ones who originally said we didn't think it was that bad. Well, it has kind of gotten to be bad. So knowing that and seeing that, take that into consideration and think about what you want to do here if this is actually going to logistically work. So
Right.
yeah,
And that's the thing. And I think, again, I'm one of those people. I if I make a decision to go out and I get sick, I get sick. That's kind of my own personal opinion. Um,
right.
but when you look at everything in hindsight, there's big pockets around the country. The problem is those pockets are very heavily in the professional sporting arenas. So
Mm-hmm.
you got to kind of let it at least get under control before you do anything. Now, the NHL
Yeah.
is taking offers from cities that would be willing to host playoffs. Um,
Sure.
so I think that's something more leagues are going to look at is let's go into areas that aren't don't have as high of an infection rate
Mm-hmm.
and that are starting to loosen up because there are some states that are already saying we're going to start loosening this thing up. Once our local curve starts to flatten, we're opening up.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I don't think we're going to wake up one day and everything's going to be open. I think it was just
Yeah.
areas are going
Yeah.
to make the decisions based on their localities. Um,
Sure.
Obviously, I don't see New York opening up until July
Oof.
at the
Yeah. Yeah. At
earliest.
least. Yeah.
Uh, but
But
here in
that's the
Wisconsin,
thing. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you had a hockey game somewhere, even if you couldn't have necessarily the fan experience of being at the game, just having it in that city, it might generate some excitement, it might generate some revenue, there might be some opportunities there to be creative about it by having an NHL game, a playoff series in your city. And if you're worried about it, you can just have essential personnel there, but you'd still have it there to give that
right?
city a playoff experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And you look at in Wisconsin, I would say, I honestly think that we could start opening stuff up here at the end of May,
Mm-hmm.
at the rate our state is going. Again,
Right.
it's different every state. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's how things are going to start opening up. Is it's going to be the states themselves start loosening things up as they look at their local and then take the
Mm-hmm.
national stuff into consideration because now I don't want to get into the whole COVID
Right.
thing
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
but you
There's
know
there's a lot of other podcasts for that.
right the one thing that kind of irritated me was how we're counting fatalities to this thing. It's like if I go into the ER because I'm having a heart attack and they find
Yeah.
out that I have the COVID, they're counting it as a COVID death even though
Right.
I died of a heart attack. So
Right.
you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt, and I think that's where the states are starting to look at it and be like, okay, let's really look at our local numbers, our
Yeah.
area, because that's to me, that's kind of irresponsible because if somebody
Yeah.
has cancer, and yes, the COVID might have forced them to go into the hospital, but
Mm-hmm.
they had say they have terminal brain cancer,
Sure.
and COVID just put them in the hospital because they're really ill because they have a lower immune system because of cancer treatment, and then they end up
Yeah.
passing away. They're calling that COVID.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so again, I'm not spending a lot of time in it, but I wanted to bring that up. That's my big frustration with this whole thing, is
Right.
how we're looking statistically at stuff. It doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
to me, anyways. Maybe to doctors and whatnot it does, but I'll tell you
Right.
right
And they
now,
may be able to.
if that was me making the decision, I'd be like, no, we're actually going to go off actual cause of death.
Right.
It's like so, but so the NHL is working to
Nevertheless.
move back.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
just came out today. I read this a little bit ago. XFL has laid off all of their staff and has no plans for a 2021 season. So, so
Well,
the question is this:
oh my god.
we're are they using it as because of the COVID thing, or is it they are looked at it? The COVID closed them down, so they were able to look at all the financial ramifications of their league and see, ooh, we're losing money. We're done.
Uh,
So XFL lasted one season.
done.
XFL 2.0 lasted less than half a season.
Yep.
Um, maybe the
Boy, oh
third time's
boy.
charm for Vince McMahon and the XFL. I'm sure he will try something again.
I'm sure he
But
will. They put a lot of time, money, and effort into this particular venture. It kind of stinks for them that this had to happen now in terms of shutting down their league, basically. But you and I both didn't really have high hopes for this league anyway.
no,
So I
no, we
mean,
didn't.
it was going to end either way. So I guess it just got an early stake in the grave as opposed to being done after this season. They didn't even get a full season, but I figured they were only going to get one anyway. So
Right. So, you know, that's kind of where we are with all the league stuff. So diving into the meat of our show, NFL
yes,
draft primer. Next week we will be having our mock draft special.
yep,
So anybody listening, if you want to be part of that, you need to go to our website, which is in our bio, and send us a message if you have a favorite team that you want to pick for. You'll either pick for that team in my slot or in Lone Wolf's slot, and we'll go from there. So if you want to be a part of that, send us an email, and we'll get in touch with you on that. Um, we are moving
so
into the West division, or I'm sorry, we'll finish with the West with the East
start with the
divisions.
East. Yes, the East divisions.
Um, and we'll start with in the NFC East, because I think
Okay, sounds good to me.
I just don't think the NFC East, there are a lot of um, there's not going to be a lot of change that happens in the draft. You're not going to see a team get a player that's going to put them into the discussion to
It,
possibly be in a playoffs hunt or division title hunt.
yeah,
So
I mean, well, and more so even than that, none of these four teams to me is going to be an elite team because of who they draft, and because of who they got in free agency. I mean, none of these teams are gonna like make that next jump unless something unprecedented happens. I don't see it this year for any of these four teams.
yeah, I agree. You look at you look at the landscape. I think the entire division's average at best. Um, so we'll kind of run down this. We got 4 divisions to go through, and there are some interesting things that have kind of come up the last couple of days that I've read and watched
Hmm.
that I wanted to talk about. So we'll start with the Washington Redskins because I
Okay.
think that pick, um, you know, you have a lot of options here, and
Yeah.
depending on who you listen to, who you talk to, what
Yeah.
you read, really has a different take on what the Redskins might do at number 2.
Yes, they really do.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'll go into, we're not doing the mock today, but we'll talk about a little bit, some of the stuff that's transpired, you know, um, throughout the week at the end.
Right.
But I I think the Redskins are in a good position to get an impact player that's going to help them eventually be a
Hmm.
contending team. Not necessarily
Right.
for the Super Bowl, because I think they have a long way to go. And
Oh
my
yeah,
feeling
definitely.
on them is that Dan Schneider needs to learn to just to sit there, sign the checks, and keep his nose out of the football business.
Right. Until
As
that happens, I mean,
until
it's probably
yeah,
not going to be. It's going to be an Al Davis situation,
right.
like in Oakland, and it's just not going to happen. I mean, the Redskins once upon a time were great, but all the coaches that they've gone through, even going back through Joe Gibbs again,
Hmm.
it just hasn't worked. Um, I I'm not overly sold on Ron Rivera, but I'm not. I'm kind of a little lukewarm, maybe. I mean, I could see him bringing his teams won't be awful. I guess let's put it that way. I don't see this being, a team that goes out there, doesn't play hard, and is like 2-14. But I don't think they're going to be that great this year. So
No, I think you're right. You hit it right on the head. I'm not really high on Ron Rivera. I think he'll be a stabilizing factor,
yeah,
um, there. Um, but I really, yeah, I think the best he'll get them up to is like a 500 record. Eventually at some point before he's
yeah.
no longer there. It's not going to happen this year. Um, they could do a lot of things at number 2. Um, they need
What do you
help
think
on
they're
def.
going to do? What do you really think they're going to do?
I mean, to be honest, I think they're in a great position because I think the Bengals aren't going to be smart with the number 1 pick, and I think they're going to get Chase Young. Now,
Hmm.
you depending on, and again, I keep saying it episode after
Yeah,
episode. These people that get paid a lot of money to all they do is like look at the draft and the NFL and stuff. I just don't get what they're saying. They are saying that the Redskins should take a quarterback. One individual said, "You keep picking a quarterback until you get the one." Okay, but here's
wow,
the thing. So I'm going to have 6 quarterbacks on my roster because I'm always in the top 5 because I stink because I never
right?
draft anybody else. You have Dwayne Haskins, who you don't really know what you have yet.
No,
You,
not
you, you
quite.
don't know what you have. You brought
Right.
in the young guy that Ron Rivera had in Carolina that filled in for Cam Newton this year,
Oh yeah,
did
Kyle Allen. Yeah,
who did okay at points.
right.
Um, and here's the thing. Here's the thing, and I don't know where he's at physically.
Right.
You still have Alex Smith,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
technically.
true.
You still
Right.
technically have Alex Smith. So
Yeah.
I don't think jumping and sitting there and grabbing yet another young quarterback is a
Hmm.
smart thing to do. Now, Could they? Absolutely, they could.
Yeah,
If the Bengals are smart,
yeah,
they would take Chase Young. But again, this is
right,
kind of
right.
getting in the mock draft thing. And I don't think they're
It
going to
is
do that.
right.
Um,
I don't think so either. I mean, I agree with you. There's a few people out there that have put Chase Young in a Bengals uniform. I think that's probably maybe the best thing for them, but I don't think they'll do that. The Redskins absolutely should not draft a quarterback.
no, if,
They should just draft Chase Young and I mean it seems to me like that would be the best, absolutely best pick for them.
now the only other thing I would say is because you don't necessarily need a quarterback, but you need help in so many places that if a team, like the Jaguars or like the
Uh
Chargers
huh.
want to jump up to number 2 to get, if Joe Burrows would go
Get their
number
guy,
1
whoever it is.
and the
Yeah. Yep.
Chargers felt that their guy was not going to drop to them at 6 and they want to
Because
flip flop
Miami might take
picks,
him. Right.
you know, I would do that because you're still going to get a quality defensive player at 6. The Lions are in the same position. They might trade. You could trade back. The Giants, same thing. They could trade back with somebody that wants one of these quarterbacks. Um, and we'll we'll get it. I'll get into that,
Yeah. Yeah.
during the mock draft. But I think if I'm the Redskins, and unless an
Yeah.
offer, like I'll tell you right now, yeah, it's only 4 picks, but I'm not swapping first round picks and taking a second round pick for number 2.
No. Right.
I'm
Because you
not
think,
doing
I
it.
mean, that's like a future franchise kind of thing,
Right.
and the Redskins had, in years past, the Redskins had, given up quite a bit so that they could get up there and they could get Robert Griffin the third. Um, and then I think that was with the Rams, or I don't remember offhand who they
Yeah.
did that with, but I think it was with the Rams. But yeah, so I mean, I agree. If you're up at that pick, um, yeah, you're going to get more than just say, hey, I'm going to swap this pick with you, or however you want to do it, and you're not going to get that for that value of a pick, because you think at number 2 you're going to get what, a franchise player that you're going to have for 10 years.
Well, then that's what you hope. Because I'll tell you right now, if I'm sitting there, I have my option between Chase Young or trading with the Chargers
Yeah,
or maybe even the Jaguars decide they want a quarterback. Guess what? They're desperate.
right, exactly.
Well, and this is what I don't get. Is GMs tend to want to be nice to each other.
Yeah,
Why? My concern is my franchise. And even if
yeah.
I can basically blackmail you and give me an extra pick or two, I'm going to do it. I don't care if they're 5th round picks.
Yeah.
Swap, give me a
Well, yeah, they
second.
can be nice to each other. I mean, to a certain extent, but yeah, you got to do the best for your
So,
franchise.
the Redskins can hold the number 2 at that pick hostage to
Yeah,
anybody that wants to move up to possibly get a quarterback, or if the rest of those teams say, "Oh no, we're not doing that," fine, we'll take Chase Young.
right,
Have fun,
right.
So, I really
It's an
think,
intriguing pick. It's an intriguing pick.
yeah, because they could go multiple ways. I think either way is gonna help them out,
Yeah,
moving forward. They have so many needs
right.
on that franchise that it's gonna be you know 2-3 years before they're even viable again.
Yeah.
Um, they do need a running back because I'm sorry, Adrian Peterson is not going to be running forever.
No, he
Um,
won't be. He's a great
you
player,
know,
but no, he won't be.
so they do need some other positional help. But Chase Young, I think, is that cornerstone franchise, possibly changing player you could get.
Right.
Um, that kind of sets you up for positive things moving forward because that's what they need. They need something positive going on
Well, and I
over in
think,
Washington.
I know they have some retreads with Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera, but you give them some talent, you give them some guys up front that can do something and be impactful. If you put Young into the mix with the Ryan Kerrigans and the Montez Sweats, they actually have a pretty decent pass rush in Washington.
Hmm.
If you do that, and then you have something there that maybe covers up some of the deficiencies in the secondary. If you've got a really good pass rush, well, then you establish something a little bit better on offense, and maybe Haskins is better, and they're not so bad next year. So, um, I mean, I think the future can only be a little bit better for this team, but it's an intriguing spot. So, I say, I think that kind of covers the Redskins. Let's maybe move on to another team in this division.
Yeah, we'll move
Um,
up to the Giants, who you're at pick number 4.
yep.
Um, here's the interesting thing here. So, and I don't know if I touched on it last week or not, is that the Giants went out and signed Blake Martinez and Kyle Fackrell from the Packers.
Right.
And Martinez came out and said, that the Packers don't value middle linebackers, the Giants do, blah blah blah. You're sitting at number 4. I think it's too high for a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Um, it is, they don't need a quarterback.
Nope. They're all in on Daniel Jones. So
I think they're going to do one of two things here. They're either going to go offensive line, which you
right.
only have a handful of quality offensive linemen that are worth a top 10 pick this year,
Right.
or they're going to go with linebacker.
Right.
um,
Which is kind of funny
which
considering
is
what they
funny.
did in free agency, but
But I just again we're kind of blending the draft in just because they have a high pick.
yeah.
I don't
Well,
want
it's
to give
about their needs. It's about what
I don't
they
want to
want.
give I don't
So
want to give any of my mock draft stuff away. Um,
yeah,
but
exactly.
I do think I think again I look at all the stuff from a general manager standpoint, and I'm saying Jones is my guy. Well, I better
Right.
get somebody to protect him.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I mean, most people have them picking Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, and even if it's a safe pick or a not very exciting pick or whatever you want to call it, it's the smart pick. You put another good offensive lineman in front of your quarterback. This is your guy. If he cleans up some of his mistakes, he had moments last year when he played lights out.
right.
He threw 4 touchdowns in a couple different games. He gets rid of some of the mistakes, and you give him some more protection. Well, you believe in this guy, so yeah, I think he can be successful if they give him the tools to be successful. So yeah, offensive line at number 4 for the Giants. I don't see them as bouncing around. Yes, they have a lot of needs like we talked about, but I don't see them moving from the number 4 spot necessarily.
No.
Um, I don't really
Again,
think that that's a possibility.
that's always possible if a
It is,
team's
yeah, with the right
team
offer,
sits
yeah,
there and says, "Hey, we'll give you, all this stuff, all these picks." You might pull the trigger, but I
right.
think I think the Giants stay pat there and take an offensive lineman. Um, well, and again, I'm not. I'm trying to refrain from saying who I think they're going to pick because that's for next week. It's not for this week.
Right, exactly. Right.
But
Yep.
again, the Giants are one of those teams that they have a lot of needs, but you have Barkley, you have Jones. You need to put an offensive line in front of them um, in order to keep them healthy and give Barkley some room to run. Um,
Right.
that's a smart
Yeah.
pick
And
there.
ultimately for them, you're not going to take one pick and instantly make one part of your
No,
team better. They have needs at tight end, wide
yeah,
receiver, pass rush, offensive line, linebacker, defensive back. I mean,
yeah,
they have needs everywhere, so you can't just, oh, we're going to put one person in there, and it's not. I mean, yes, they signed a few free agents. You touched on them. They also brought in James Bradbury. You know, it's they just have too many needs
Right.
in this case. So there's just way too much for them to bring in. So yeah, I think that's a pretty safe pick for them at number 4.
All right, moving on to the Cowboys. Um, looking at them, and a lot of things I'm reading, they're going to try to solidify their defense, um,
Mm-hmm.
which I do agree with. I think they're going to look for to add somebody to the front end of their defense. But don't be surprised here if they take an offensive lineman if one falls,
Mm-hmm.
um, because they just lost their center to retirement.
Right. Yep.
Now, are
I
there
saw
any
that.
first round centers out there? No, but here's my philosophy: if you're a interior offensive lineman and you're good enough to play in the NFL, they can develop you into a center.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they go offensive line because I mean losing your center is big.
It
Um,
is.
you know, so don't be surprised if they go offensive line. The money is that they'll add somebody to the front end of their defense to try to solidify that a little bit more. Um, don't know, they can't go out and sign anybody. Um,
No, they don't
you
have
know,
the money for
they
that.
don't have the money. They have so much money tied up on their offensive side of the ball right now that it's
Right.
that they can't really. They have to build through the draft on defense. So
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure what your thoughts on what they may or may not do.
I would say personally, I think I thought about this a little bit, and I'm a little all over the map with the Cowboys, but I want to dig into them a little bit more before we decide on who picks for the draft. My personal feeling is that I think that they're going for a defensive player. That would be my thought. I know what you're saying about the offensive line and possibly going that route, but I just feel like they're going to go for something a little bit more splashy um, on the defensive side of the football. You know, probably probably a pass rusher, maybe a corner, but I would say maybe a pass rusher in that particular situation. That's more of my feeling there.
Yeah, and again, they aren't a team that has a ton of needs,
Right,
especially on the offense, except for I think O line. But
right,
their defense, it's one of those defenses that could really be good, but
yeah,
they just haven't pulled it all together. And they again,
right,
they had that draft class with you know Dak and Elliott, and
yeah.
they had some defensive quality defensive guys in
They
that
did,
class also
yeah,
that are going to be coming up for contracts.
right.
So that's why I was kind of surprised when they went huge with Amari Cooper because they they aren't going to have a ton of money to sign these defensive guys. So I think they're going to look at building through the draft
Hmm.
on the defense, starting with that 17th pick.
Well, and I
Now
think
they
part of their problem is they have a lot of talent, but they haven't been able to put it together. I mean, this is kind of the
right,
Cowboys' story, right?
and but
So
hey, that they have the mastermind Mike McCarthy now, so
that's true.
uh, things are going to get better. Probably not.
I mean, they're kind of mired in mediocrity. So,
We know a
hey, if
lot
he's
about
worth
that
a
from Mike
win, maybe they're
McCarthy's
nine and
last couple of
seven,
years.
and yeah, I mean, come
So
on.
so all right. Again, and not too much to talk about with the Cowboys.
No,
Um, we'll move on to the Eagles.
Eagles.
Uh,
Yep.
couple of areas I think that they could. use help on. First one is linebacker. Um, you know, again, I think when you start getting to that 20 pick, you have a lot of people that start you get really narrowed in because they have to start looking at it as like, okay, these guys aren't going to be here when we pick,
Right.
so we'll rate them, but we're not going to be like, all right, we're gonna try to get this guy. So I think they go linebacker, and they need to get to retool that offense a little bit. I think around Carson Wentz,
Yeah.
um, because they've since the Super Bowl win, they haven't been really productive at the wide receiver area. They got a couple nice running backs, but I think they could use some weapons on offense or a playmaker on defense in that middle of the field there. Um, you know, again, I think they're the best team in the NFC East, and I don't know, I just don't know if any of the teams can catch them. So they're going to be
Hmm.
by default, the consensus probably to win the division next year. You might get some
I think
Cowboy
so.
fans, but I think, just by default, because you look at the other teams, they aren't as good. So I think because of that, they have some flexibility here
Yeah.
to, maybe trade back, try to pick up a couple of picks, or even, if they feel that, there's a player that really could help get them back in the Super Bowl contention, trade up. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I think linebacker or wide receiver. Just quickly get my notes here. I'll say what position I think I have them going at. If I can find them.
Well, and I tend to agree with you. I mean, they handed Darius Slay that huge contract, so they're not necessarily looking at corner. Linebacker is definitely an area that they need to address. At that slot, I think that's definitely a possibility, depending on what kind of linebacker that you're looking for. Are you looking for somebody who spans the field and tackles well, or is better in pass coverage? Do you think you can find a guy that can do all of that at that spot? But that's a need area for them, so I could see them addressing that there. Part of the issue they had last year with wide receivers, they had so many injuries that it really put a damper on that. And their offense really ran a lot through the tight end with Zach Ertz and some of the other tight ends that they had. I'm just looking. To me, the intriguing story is okay. Do you believe in the running backs that you have? Is Miles Sanders or one of these other guys, Boston, are they going to break out next year? Some people are saying Miles Sanders is going to break out. If you believe that, then you don't worry about that part of the football field. You don't worry about running backs. You don't worry about. But if you don't believe that, then maybe you look to draft somebody else. I just don't know if they really would want to do that. They've already got a couple of guys that they've drafted recently in that area. So I mean, I I wanted to try to think of something a little bit different than what you were saying, but I totally agree. Receiver and linebacker is really where they need to go. I mean that's pretty much the obvious choice if you're the Eagles early on, one or the other. And there's a really deep class for wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't necessarily have to go there early on, but you could get some really good help maybe at linebacker at that spot and then wait to draft a wide receiver a little later on. I didn't look to see what pick they have, second round, third round. But I think they probably will go linebacker. I think they would go linebacker in the first round, and then maybe go receiver later.
Yeah, and again, I'm not going to give out my pick, what I have
Right.
them
No.
doing,
Yeah. We don't.
but I do have them picking a linebacker. I picked 21. Um, you know, I really think, again, a lot with the draft is looking at the teams in front of you when you're laying out your draft strategy. and saying, what are these teams going, need? What are their needs, and what are our needs, and how do they compare? And when you look at it, there's only one team in front of the Eagles that a lot of people are projecting to take a linebacker. So you're sitting at
Mm-hmm.
21. I can't remember, you know, a draft where the second best linebacker in the draft dropped all the way to 21,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age where
Right.
linebackers are at a premium in the NFL.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if the projections hold. But yeah, like I said, I think you don't need to address wide receiver first round. Yes, you got some top
Right.
notch guys there, but it's such a deep class. You can
Yeah.
get guys that can come in if you have a quality quarterback and be really good, even though you're not considered a top tier receiver in the draft. You look at some of these other teams that that might take a receiver that are projected and they don't have really good quarterbacks. So you may be considered a great receiver, but you don't have a guy that can throw you the ball.
Well, and the Eagles really haven't been thriving off of a true number one stud receiver in their offense um, under Doug Peterson. They really haven't been doing that. They've had a tight end that's prolific, and they've had some receivers that are good. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. Some of these guys have had with the over the last couple of years have been with the Eagles and have had success. And so they've had that, but they've never really had that really big stud Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones type receiver. Um, and so I don't think that you're looking for that in Philadelphia anyway. Not with what they're running on offense, unless they decide to drastically change something. So they could probably snag a guy day 2 or 3 and look to plug that guy into their system.
Right. I agree with that. So that wraps up the NFC East. We're
Yep.
going to keep plowing ahead because we have three more divisions to get through.
Yeah.
AFC East. Um, we're gonna go a little different order because I don't want to start with the Dolphins because there's so much we can talk
I
about the
know they have
Dolphins.
so many picks. There's so much going
Um,
on.
let's start with the Jets. Um, at number 11, um, they, I think what their philosophy is, I think they feel they have their quarterback in Darnold. Um, which I still think, let's see if he can, keep progressing here the next year or two. Um, but I think they need to give him some offensive weapons. They need to, because what teams are going to do is they're going to just stack the box. They're going to stop Bell and say
Right.
Darnold beat us, and they just don't have you. They lost Robbie Anderson um,
Right.
in free agency. They could go. I have them going wide receiver at
Yeah.
their pick. Um, you know, they could go also offensive line,
Right.
depending on where they feel their bigger need is. Again, it's a wide receiver rich draft. Do you
It
take
is.
an offensive lineman to help protect Darnold, keep him upright, and then take maybe a second tier receiver? And because you think Darnold has that ability to get to him the receivers the ball, that like a receiver in second, third round may be just as good. Um, down the line. So again, offensive line or wide receiver, I do not see them going defense. If they do, they might because you do have Adam Gase having influence on what they do. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, who knows what they'll actually do. But the safe bet is wide receiver or offensive line, in my opinion.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. The more exciting pick would be a wide receiver that could potentially be a stud. But the better and safer pick would be an offensive lineman, and they absolutely need that. if they're going to bet on Darnold, which I think they are, right? I mean, that's the that's the idea. So again, this is much like a New York, the other team in New York. Um, they need the same thing. They're betting on their young guy. Honestly, I don't think that if Adam Gase has another mediocre campaign as the Jets head coach, he's going to still be there. So if you put an offensive lineman there, that guy can transition over to the new head coach following this next season, and that would probably be the better pick at this point, in my opinion. And then you get a receiver later, not just for the reasons you outlined, but because of that reason as well. And I fully expect that Adam Gase is going to be out as the head coach. So I would rather have them go with an offensive lineman, and you reserve that guy to protect your quarterback for the next 3 4 seasons, 5 seasons, whatever it is. Um, before they have contracts and free agency and everything else. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'm not gonna comment on Adam Gase whether he'll be the head coach after this season.
He
We'll
won't
wait.
be.
We'll wait until we at least
I
give him a
know,
chance
yeah.
to get through training camp. But
I'm not even giving
um,
him a chance. Smack talk. He's gonna be gone.
that's right. He's gone. We haven't even gotten to the draft. He's gone. Sorry, Mr. Gase. Your time is up.
Lone Wolf is calling you out.
So, so we'll see. We'll see what the Jets do.
Yeah.
I think there can be a decent team, maybe push for the 500 mark, but I'm still not confident that they can, um, be in contention for a playoff position or a playoff run.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't
So
think so. So
so
next
moving
team.
moving on to the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills do not have a first round draft pick. They addressed
Nope.
what I think is one of their glaring needs um, in the offseason by trading for Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so I think that they're kind of in a position now, right now, when you look at the landscape of the NFC East or the AFC East, sorry,
Yeah.
um, that they are hands down the favorite to win that division.
Yeah.
If they don't win that division, that they did something horribly wrong, or they had major injuries, or something had weird happened that nobody saw
Right.
coming.
Right. Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be them identifying where they want depth and um, and drafting players that can add depth and that they can develop over the next couple of years. So when guys leave in free agency because their team has done good, because that's what always happens, now they have these
Right.
guys that they drafted and developed to take places. They don't have to overspend to keep certain guys. So um, I don't know if I don't see them wanting to jump back into the end of the first round. I think they sit pat where they're at and be happy that they now have a receiver to get the ball to and spread the field.
Right. Yeah, they definitely have that. I think the thing that they really need, when it comes around to pick 54 or pick 86, second and third round, I think they need an offensive lineman. I think that that was one area they need to address from last season. It was okay, but it wasn't maybe where they want it to be for this year. If they're eyeing the division and they're licking their chops and they're saying we have the chance to be the number one team in this division, then I think they've got to put their young guy in a position to have as much protection as possible and use those weapons that they have now. Yeah, I mean they could use maybe another receiver or running back or something like that, but that's not an immediate uh, right away need with those picks early on. I think you want to get an offensive lineman in there, and kind of like you said, add some depth. But I think they need to shore that up a little bit, and then go from there. That's what I would say. I agree with you. I know there are still people out there who are saying this is the Patriots' division to lose, but you and I have both said we think the Bills will win the division this year. Um, that's our feeling in this case. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's probably about it for the Bills. I mean, that's really what they need to do.
yeah. They don't have a ton of picks, um, so it is it it's
Bring in to address your needs, get some depth, and then you're going for it this year, kind of thing. So yep. So then we have either the Dolphins or the Patriots. Who do you want to start with?
oh let's get the Patriots out of the way. Um,
Okay.
so this is an interesting team because
Yep.
um, they they obviously need a quarterback. You need to replace Tom Brady, but
Right.
there's a but. I read a lot of articles this week indicating that there are a lot of scouts that think that they got a steal with Jared Stedman,
Yeah.
and that they are high on him. So I don't feel, like some people are saying that they're going to take a quarterback at 23. I don't think they are.
Right.
I don't think that Bill Belichick is going to sit there and say, "Oh, I'm desperate. I'm going to draft a quarterback
I
to
don't think
develop."
Bill Belichick ever comes across as being desperate.
And it kind of makes sense now after reading the articles
Yeah.
that they brought in Hoyer, a veteran journeyman, to kind of be there to help Stedman along on how to kind of navigate an NFL team, an NFL huddle
Yeah.
without Tom Brady being there. With that being said, they didn't just lose Tom Brady.
Right.
They lost a lot of guys via free agency this year.
Yes, they
And
really did.
and
Yeah.
this isn't like a retooling
Right.
that they're going through this year. This is a rebuild. And people can say, "Oh, Belichick doesn't rebuild; he retools." This is not a retool. There's no
Right.
way this is a retool. I also read an article that since 2013, they have not drafted one Pro Bowl caliber player. Like
Hmm.
like drafted. They've signed guys that have made the Pro Bowl, but they haven't drafted a guy
Right.
that's developed into a Pro Bowl player since Jamie Collins. That speaks volumes
It
right
does. Yeah.
there. With that said, when I look at everything, and I did a preliminary, went through my preliminary mock draft, and I have to update this after all the stuff I've read because I did have them, and I will say it, I did have them taking Jordan Love. I don't
Hmm.
think they're going to after reading the stuff I've read. I think
About
they're
them
gonna
being high on Stidham. Yeah.
right. I think they're going to start rebuilding that defense because I think Bill Belichick knows I can have a mediocre offense if I have a good defense and still win football games. So I
And that
think
that's kind of what they had last year. I mean, their offense, Tom Brady did his best to make a skill position group that was horrible as good as he possibly could. And I mean, his skills were on the decline, but their receivers were awful.
right,
The
and
tight ends were awful, you know.
they could take a receiver at 23.
Right.
I just look at it like this: is that again? I'm looking at it from the GM perspective. It's going to take Stidman a couple of probably a year or two to really develop. Um,
Yeah.
to bringing in kind of you're now getting to that like second grouping of wide receivers in the draft class. If you go there, or do I get a defensive player that can come in, play day one, and I know is going to give me an impact? Because if you bring in a receiver, he's only going to be as good as your second year quarterback that has never started a game.
Right.
So I really think they're going to focus defense. They could go anywhere on defense. They could go line, they could go secondary. But I think they focus on rebuilding that defense to what it was all the way back to when they won their last Super Bowl. So that's where I think that they will be headed. Could totally be wrong. They could jump up and take a quarterback. But I'll tell you, any Patriot fan that listens to our show, if they take a quarterback, it's a rebuild. That they're saying they're rebuilding. They're not trying to win now. They're building for the future. So that is the one thing you kind of need to look at when you're looking at that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and they lost a couple of really key linebackers in free agency. So I mean, do they go for somebody in that area of the field? It's possible because they lost, I think, at least three linebackers in free agency. So you're looking at a position of need there. Now, we just talked about this for the Eagles and what have you just a moment ago. Do they go that route? But yeah, defense wise, I guess I look at it like this. Okay, so the most important position in the field, I think most people would say, is the quarterback. So you lose probably the best quarterback, arguably, to play the position ever, and then you replace him with a second-year guy that hasn't, really played at all. Uh, as a quarterback, there's certain guys out there who elevate their teams or elevate their other players on offense to be better. Tom Brady was one of those. So if you take a wide receiver, you're absolutely right. He's only as good as the guy who's under center who's getting him the football. Because we see this game in and game out. This guy just didn't get so and so the football. Well, he didn't put it in the right spot because he's not as good. Some
Right.
of these guys have to make throws in such a small window, and if you're just not as good as that top tier guy, you're not putting it there. Um, Belichick will have a plan, but this team, people are, they still want to believe in the Patriots. This team is not going to be as good as it was last year. They've lost too many people, not just Tom Brady. And I think defense is probably the smarter pick. I just look at their linebacking core as being decimated, and I feel like they're going to go with either some type of edge rusher or linebacker as opposed to going for a quarterback, a wide receiver, or a tight end. I just don't feel like that's the case. I think they go defense. Belichick has a tendency to do things his own way. I don't think he falls victim to this is the guy we have to take because this is what everybody says that we have to take kind of mentality. So I think he's going to do what he's going to follow what his plan is. And I think I agree with you. It tends to be more something along those lines.
Yeah, I don't doubt Bill Belichick has a plan. I'm sure
Right.
he went into Bob Kraft and said, "Hey, here's reality. We knew this day was coming eventually.
Right.
Here's my plan. If you want me to try to execute it, I'll do it. If not, I'm gone."
Yeah.
So, I think it's one of those things where if things don't go well, you may see Bill Belichick just step away um, from coaching if
Mm-hmm.
things don't go well, or if front office starts to try to pressure him, saying, "Hey, we need to take a franchise quarterback in the first round." I think if that happens, that is not a decision of Bill Belichick. So,
Yeah. And they have
so
a lot of picks too. I mean, so they can build pretty well. They have like 12 picks. They can build pretty well in this draft.
yeah,
But yeah,
they'll move some of those picks. They'll move up in the
yeah, they
draft.
will. Yeah, yeah.
Um, to get some more second, third round picks. So moving on to probably the
To the
most
Dolphins.
intriguing team in the NFL right now. I say that because they have 3 first round draft picks.
Yes.
Um,
And they
and
signed a boatload of free agents.
signed a boatload of free agents. Obviously, a glaring need is quarterback. Now,
Yes.
we know they're going to take a quarterback. It's just which one.
Right.
Um, I've for and this is where we're kind of crossing over into our mock draft stuff. I think if they were smart, the Bengals would trade with the Dolphins for the number 5 and say,
Yeah.
give me your number 5 and number 18 and a second round draft pick for the number 1.
Right.
Steep price, but if you want Joe Burrow,
You'd pay it. Right. Yeah.
that's what you give me. I go back to 5 and I take one of the other quarterbacks. If you're
Right.
smart, we're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
probably not
the
going to do
the
that.
Bungles.
The
Yeah.
reports are that they are being very, very strong headed with the number 1 pick and that they are ready to make their pick. And so the Dolphins are unless they increase their offer, um, will not be trading up. Now, there's rumors that the Chargers could be moving up in front of the Dolphins to take a guy. I look at it this way. There's 3 quarterbacks that everybody keeps talking about: Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Tua.
Right.
If I'm in the top 5 and I get one of those guys, I'm happy.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it a lot next week in our mock draft. Not
Right.
really high on any of them. I looked at statistics.
Yeah.
If Joe Burrow is such a great quarterback, why did he not start until he transferred from Ohio State to LSU?
Right.
If he was such a great quarterback, you were on a great team this year
Yeah.
for college. So I want to press. He might end up being a great NFL quarterback, just like any of these guys. But I am very, very um, cautious with quarterback, especially at the number 1 pick. I think I went through all of the Super Bowl champions, and I
Mm-hmm.
believe it was only eight overall number 1 picks that were quarterbacks have won the Super Bowl.
Right. Right.
And that's multiple, some guys multiple wins. So
Sure.
your chances of getting a guy at number 1 at quarterback and winning the Super Bowl is very, very slim. So
Yeah.
that's why
I mean, the problem is everybody thinks that they get that guy, right?
right,
I mean, and you look at it and you say, man, everybody thinks they know, but I'll tell you, there's so many instances. I know Peyton Manning was taken number 1, but wasn't that the debate? Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf, who's better?
right.
Well, if Ryan Leaf went number 1 and Peyton Manning went number 2, man, what a choice that would have been. A druggy
Yep,
burnout as opposed to one of the most prolific quarterbacks we've ever seen.
right.
So you can't say that it's a guarantee that number 1 pick as a quarterback is going to be that superstar. It's definitely not statistically. You see that, um, and
Eh, eh,
and I'm not sold on in any one of these 3 guys either to say, okay, this is the guy and he's going to be an elite NFL player.
right. I don't see that. I don't see a Peyton
Yeah,
Manning or Joe Montana or any of those all-time great, quarterbacks coming out like a
Players
John
out of these
Elway.
guys. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not getting that feeling
Right.
from any of these guys. Um, and I'm not one. You talk to the so-called NFL analysts, experts, and they keep saying you have to keep taking a quarterback till you find one. Bull. You don't.
No. No, you
You
don't.
don't. You do not need to draft a quarterback in the first round to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
You
Pretty
don't.
sure that there's a lot of instances of teams that have won a Super Bowl without drafting a guy in the first round. Seattle
So
Seahawks, maybe.
right, the Seattle
Yeah.
Seahawks. There are multiple.
There's lots of
Um,
teams that have done that. Yeah.
and so I don't buy into that. Now,
Yeah.
if you think the guy is that great, then fine. But if I'm looking at this situation, like with the Dolphins,
Right.
because that's who we're talking about here, I
Right.
wouldn't trade up because I have 3 first-round draft picks. So guess what? I'm
Right.
going to take a quarterback because
Yep.
it's a need. It's a need. I
It is
mean,
a
it
need.
is a
It
need.
is. Yep. Yep.
You're at the number 5 pick. You need a quarterback. There's going to be a projected elite quarterback available. You take them
Correct. Yes. I agree.
because then I got 2 other picks to help fill in some holes
Right.
on
And
my
address some of those
team.
needs that, yeah. Yep.
So let's move on to the other needs here. Because obviously, like I just said, I do have the Dolphins taking a quarterback at number
Yeah.
5. I'm not going to say which one.
I
Um,
will say, I think an absolute need for the Dolphins is a running back. They desperately need a primary ball carrier in Miami.
so
I think
the
last year Ryan Fitzpatrick might have led them in rushing. So I just, which is
so
embarrassing. So I think they
so
need a running back.
my question to you then
Yeah.
is there a running back that's worthy of either the 18th or 26th pick?
Well, okay. So what I would say is, this day and age, it's hard to say. But why not our buddy Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin? Why not at the number 26 pick? That's been a little bit of the buzz about him lately, and I know that it's not always popular to take a running back in the first round, but if you're going to take somebody, why not pair him with that young quarterback and make the duo for the future, the Dak Zeke duo in Miami.
Well, but my thing is, I don't think he is I wouldn't value him as high at
As
26.
26, yeah, yeah,
Now you know, you do have uh, DeAndre Swift from
right,
Georgia.
yeah,
That's projected to be pretty high.
right,
My opinion is again, I'm looking at this from the Dolphins' perspective and saying
right.
you take a quarterback at number 5. Okay, we just spent a boatload of money free agency on defense, right?
Yep, yes, they did.
Okay, we're gonna take a quarterback with the number 5 pick.
Yes.
Well, let's get start putting some guys in front of him now that can protect him.
Mm-hmm.
And that would not leave that any question. So I think they really need to look at offensive line. Now, if they would go running back, yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't. I wouldn't be upset at that. You never can have enough playmakers, especially how quickly running backs fade in the NFL these days.
Right.
Um, but I really think they look at an offensive lineman at one of those other two picks, whether it's
Yeah,
18 or 26. Now they could package a second round and the 26th pick to move up a little higher to get a guy if they think somebody drops. Um,
sure. If he's
you,
that guy, yeah, because they
you,
have the ability to be able to do that.
I think that they have built a defense that'll be a solid defense, so they really need to focus on offense, especially
Hmm.
with these first three picks.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I,
No,
I
I agree
mean,
with that. Yeah, I don't. They don't pick a defensive player in the first round unless they thought it was a game changer. Like if Chase Young is sitting there at pick number 5, then the Dolphins say all bets are off. We take Chase Young and
yeah,
we
yeah.
we we say what the hell is wrong with those first 4 teams? But I don't
Well,
see that happening.
because I'll tell you right now, if that would happen, you're gonna still have a shot to get a decent quarterback at 18 because
Correct. Yeah.
you'll still have Jordan Love. There's some projections that even have Tua possibly falling, doing kind of an Aaron Rodgers, or you could wait
Right.
till 26 and pick up Jalen Hurts.
Right. Yes, you
So
could.
there are so many guys that yeah, if Chase Young, if you're sitting at 5, you don't get a trade, and all of a sudden Chase Young drops you at 5 for some reason, there's no hesitation there. So, but I doubt that'll happen. But it could.
Yeah,
You just never know.
I don't see it, but I mean, if that
It
were the
could.
case, I mean, they just lick their chops and say this is great. So
Right. So,
yeah,
um, again, I think the Dolphins are in a really good position. Um, from a free agency standpoint, from a draft standpoint, I think will prevent them from being able to win the division and um, competing for a playoff spot is the inexperience at quarterback. I
yeah,
just think it's going to be hard for them to do that with a rookie quarterback, um, which it could happen, but I don't see that happening. So. All right, moving along because we got two more
we got two more divisions to
divisions to
go
get
through
to.
here. Yep,
8 more
yep.
teams. We will start in the NFC West.
Okay,
Um, we will start the with the Cardinals. Um,
okay, sounds good. I got them right in front of me.
an up and coming, and I think an up and coming team. You are able to get, um, Hopkins
Houston. Yep.
from Houston. You have a young quarterback that is trending upward. I'm going to say. I'm not going to say is good, but he's trending upward. Um, but the key here is keeping him healthy, keeping him upright. I think at where they're sitting at, they go offensive line. I think that's their biggest thing that they're going to need, especially now that you do not have an established running game. Um, right away, anyways, you may have some people and may develop into a decent running game. But I think they start looking at building a solid line around Murray and give him some help and some protection and go with an offensive lineman at number 8.
Sure, and that's a pretty safe pick. Me personally, I think at number 8, given the activity that's going to happen um, in this particular case before the 8th pick, I think that you're going to see them going defense because there could, outside of Chase Young, I think that you're going to get a top tier, whatever's left over in top tier in terms of the defense. And you could definitely see that Arizona's defense was really not that good last year. And they could use help in a couple different areas. They have my guy Chandler Jones, who played lights out last year, but they need another rusher. absolutely. And at number 8, I think they could definitely see that. That's my feeling. I think they'd rather go defense than offense. Not to say that they couldn't do that. There's enough offensive linemen there that would work in that 8th spot, but I think they go defense instead of offense.
Oh, well, I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Um, that this is where our mock draft could get a little interesting, is once we get all
Yeah,
the
that's
top
right.
five. All right, so moving on to the um, Los Angeles Rams. Big news today: Brandon Cook traded to the Texans. So
Yes, I saw that. Yep.
you trade away Hopkins and you take Brandon Cooks. Um, I don't really know what Houston's doing. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't
Um,
know. Yep.
so that's all I'm going to say about it. As for the Rams, what this tells me is they're rebuild. They're in a mini rebuild. They
Yeah.
are siphoning off all the high priced guys that they brought in to make the Super Bowl run,
Right.
and it's going to be a long year for them. I don't think that they can compete for a playoff spot. I think they are going to be dead last in that division.
Yep.
Um, I'm not high on Jared Goff. Never was.
Right.
Um,
And they don't have a first round draft pick anyway.
they don't have a first round draft pick. I believe they just gave up. They might have got no. I think they. I want to say they gave up. Let me just double check. Um, either gave up or got a second round draft pick in the trade. Um,
Mm.
let's see
Somebody who
here.
has an issue in terms of hearing what's going on our show right now. I don't know what is going on there.
Huh?
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll
Okay. Well, yeah. Thanks for calling in, though. I appreciate it. I'm not sure how he could hear one of us, but not the other one. So I'm not sure why. But
okay.
anyway, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. For whoever you can hear.
Yeah,
um, yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure. Um, so let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I think they go defense. Me personally, just because they lost quite a few people on defense. The problem is for them, and this is the issue. Their offensive line needs some help as well. So this team is just going to get it's just going to get worse. I agree. They lost quite a few in free agency. They're going to have to put somebody in there who's an impact player, but they don't have anybody in the first round. So I I don't know. I mean, to me, there's just I don't know. There's just not a lot going on with this team when it comes to the draft, and they'll get somebody in the second round, but is that person going to be an immediate impact player? Um, yeah, I don't know that that's going to be the case. So I think they'll go. Um, I think they'll go with a defensive player that can be impactful. They can probably get a receiver at some point because they're going to need one now that Brandon Cooks is gone. But you know, it's going to be tough replacing all of those players that you've lost.
Right, and that's the thing. I don't think that they're going to be able to really do too much in the draft. They've really put themselves in a corner by trading
Yeah,
away first and second round draft picks for these players, and now they are facing the music with those decisions. So unfortunately, the Rams are back to the Rams of old, and we'll see if McVay they give him a chance to survive that,
Right.
um, or if they say goodbye to him, after another year or two. Keep moving on up here. The Seattle Seahawks. Um, they've lost a few key players this year
They
via
have,
free
yes.
agency. They brought in a couple of guys. I think when you look at their roster, they have wide receivers. I think that are capable. They
They
have
have a
a back
couple, I
end.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a back end of their defense is solid. They need to do a better job of keeping Wilson upright. He
Hmm.
continues to get sacked and get hit, and if that continues, his career is not going to last very much longer. Um, or you're going to probably lose Clowney. They could also use an edge rusher. Um, it's kind of either offense or defensive line that they go with. I don't think that they can go wrong. Um, at pick 27.
Well, and I think even more appropriate to that offensive line pick, and they could go defense too, but I think they're probably going to go that route. Uh, they've tried to establish the run and become more of a running team. Uh, they want to keep Wilson from having to scramble. He's probably one of the best scramblers in the league, but in a division with the 49ers and the defensive line that they have, you don't want Russell Wilson to have to run for his life every single play. Um, even with him being as good as it is. So I honestly I would say yes. I tend to agree there. Some of the things I've read is that they could go with a defensive lineman who would be a good rusher. They brought Bruce Irvin back in free agency, but yeah, they could still use somebody there. And at pick 27, you definitely could potentially get somebody like that. I think if that top 4 5, 3 4 5 defensive lineman or rusher is not there, then maybe you'll go with an offensive lineman at that point. But you could always wait until the second round too to get somebody. They got a couple picks in that vicinity. So I'm thinking they may go defensive line then offensive line as opposed to the other way around. But I don't think they go wrong either way.
Right, and I agree with that. Um, so we're gonna keep plugging along here
Yep.
because
San
we have a
Francisco
whole nother
49ers.
division. The San
Yep.
Francisco 49ers, 2 first-round draft picks.
Yep.
Um, you know, for being the Super Bowl runner-up, and you have two first-round draft picks,
The rich
you
get
gotta
richer.
be you gotta be happy.
Yeah.
Um, I do think they add another playmaker um, early in the draft at wide receiver because you can afford to do that. You give yourselves another target to go along with what you already have
Yep.
um, offensively, and then here's where when you look at 49ers, their defense was really really good.
Right.
You could add some depth to that defense. But
Mm-hmm.
here's where player that you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
it would address, I think, a need. Jonathan Taylor, running
Okay.
back at the end of the first round. Now, I'm not saying that's who I have them picking because
Right.
I'm going off of what I think they will do, not what they should do.
Right.
Um, but that would be a great pick for them. It would give you a number one running back
Mm-hmm.
along with good wide receivers, a great tight end, a good quarterback, and
Right.
now you have a guy that could hit a home run out of the backfield every time instead of we're going to change it up depending on what we want to do with our running back. Um, you know, will they do that? I don't know. I think they're happy with what
Yeah.
they have, but I personally would at that position consider it.
I think that it's definitely an intriguing possibility, especially with a guy like Kyle Shanahan. If you have some more explosive playmakers on offense, your defense was really dominant in a lot of different categories. And if you had some more explosion on offense, maybe you look at it and say, we could have won the Super Bowl. Um, I don't know. I mean, maybe that wasn't the reason why either, but you still look at it and you say, okay, is that a possibility if we do something like that? I think a guy like him would thrive in Kyle Shanahan's offense because he wouldn't have to be an every down back. They do a lot of different things with their scheme. Um, Personally, I'm thinking they won't do that. I like the idea, but I think that they would trade back maybe and get a bunch of picks if the guy that they don't want, if there's some guy at 31 and they just don't see it and it's not really the guy they want, they'll trade back and they'll get a bunch of picks and maybe the second round or something like that. But at pick 13, I think it's been penciled in. The best wide receiver on the board is going to go to San Francisco, and they have the luxury of doing that, and I think they're absolutely going to do that.
Right. I agree. I agree with the 13th pick. That if they don't go
Yeah,
wide receiver, I'd be shocked. At
yeah.
number 13. All right, the last division of our draft primer before we start to dive in and get ready for
For
our
the
mock
draft
draft
itself
next week.
here, yep.
The AFC West. We're going to start at the bottom. We're going to start with the Chargers. Obviously, I don't know if there's really much discussion that we really need to talk about. I think it's a foregone
Right.
conclusion. They're going to take a quarterback
Yes.
with the number one pick. They need a quarterback. I don't even know who their
Right.
quarterback is right now.
They have
Um,
Tyrod Taylor as their starter.
oof, wow. Okay, I didn't
So,
even know he is still in the league.
yes,
Um,
he's still in the league.
so so that the question will be who do they want, who do they value, because they're on the outside looking in. The Bengals obviously they get the pick,
Right.
who they feel the best quarterback is. The Dolphins then get the second best option, and then the Chargers kind of get what's ever left over. So if they want a say in what is going to happen, they need to trade up. I don't think they do that.
Right.
I think if their GM is smart, um, which NFL GM and smart is kind of an oxymoron because
For
some of these
some.
guys,
For some.
I just
Yeah.
it baffles my mind on some of the moves they make. But they have other needs. They need to replace Melvin Gordon. They have a
Right.
lot of other needs too, or they could just build depth. So I don't. You're gonna like I said with the Dolphins. You're gonna get a quality quarterback. You're gonna get a guy that
Hmm.
you think can be a 10, 12-year starter in the league.
Right.
Don't waste draft picks going up, because if I'm ahead of you, if I'm in the top five and I get a call from you, I'm going to try to take every single draft pick I can from you. Um, so you got to kind of be smart about it. And
Right.
I don't think there's a lot of separation between Burrow, Herbert, and Tua. I just don't. I think they're all pretty similar. You know, you're
Yeah,
not
right. I mean, yeah,
missing
you're not
out on.
getting super excited about one or the other of those guys. So if you're Los Angeles here, personally, I think you just stay put and take one of the three, whoever happens to land in your lap. I don't think you fight to get the three pick and have the say about who you really want, unless you believe in one of the three guys over the other. But I would say you just take take one of those three that comes to you. You absolutely need a quarterback. There's no question about that. Um, yeah, I mean, even if you have another guy that you bring in free agency, yeah, they have a lot of other needs. I agree with that. After losing Melvin Gordon, they've got Austin Eckler. But they need a quarterback, and that's what they're going to do. Uh, I'm just one of those people who sits here and sits back and hopes that they don't try to jump up in the draft, because we see teams do that, and I don't think it ever really works out moving up a couple spots to get quote unquote your guy.
Yeah,
Um,
I
the
mean,
Bears
again,
did that with Trubisky, and John Lynch is still laughing about it.
yeah,
So
it's not like you're sitting there saying, you know, we're not trading up to get a Peyton Manning.
right, yeah,
We're trading up to hope that we're getting somebody. You're not looking at these guys and saying this is a slam dunk perennial Pro Bowler. You're
right,
hoping and praying that he's at least a quality quarterback that'll get you through a couple of years to determine whether he's going to be good.
right,
Um,
exactly, yeah,
so again, yeah, I agree. I hope they do not trade up. Um, with all the talk, with all the different trades, if I'm either Washington, Detroit, or New York, I'm listening because somebody may want to trade up with me and give me an outrageous package that I
right,
can't say no to, and then
right,
I could go back a few spots and still get my guy.
yeah,
So, um, moving along, we're to the Denver Broncos.
yep,
Um, Again, they signed Gordon. They, have some nice, talented young receivers. Quarterback. They think they have their guy.
right,
Um, I still think they could still add a playmaker on offense, a wide receiver, depending on who's there. But we've talked about this during free agency. They have to
yeah,
start rebuilding their defense. Their
yes,
defense is getting long in the tooth,
yeah.
and they need to start replacing guys. And that I believe I have.
They're at the 15th pick. So that would be a spot where you could probably land a pretty solid defensive player um, in that particular location in the draft. I don't see that being an issue for them. I think they'd be able to do that, and I think that's the route they go. I don't know if they need to say, okay, this is the one position. I think they're kind of in a unique spot to say, outside of quarterback, where they think they have their guy, maybe they just pick the best player that's available at that point. Um, Maybe that's a better strategy for them. But I think they go defense personally in that situation. If they're going to pick the best available, they'll pick the best available defensive player.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be surprised if they do not go defense um, with the 15th pick. So continuing our climb up, the
Yep.
Raiders at number 12 and number 19. Again, they are a team. I think they're now, they're benefiting from making trades right now with these extra draft picks. Um, I think they go wide receiver at number 12. They need to get some more offensive weapons. And then I think they look to solidify some defensive depth at 19. I don't think they can go wrong at any level of their defense. I think they just need to add playmakers there. So they trade away Cooper, trade away Khalil Mack, and they're going to hopefully find replacements for him this year. That's my
And you
prediction.
know what? They're better off in the end for having done that anyway. It seems like, don't you think? I mean, we talked about that, but I think they
Absolutely.
are. Yeah, and it looks to
Absolutely.
me like they made the best choice. Um, some of the money's on them going, say, with Jerry Jeudy or somebody like that, but yeah, they definitely need a wide receiver in this case, and they'll get that person. We'll decide on what number pick in the first round that's going to be, depending on who's available. But they absolutely would do that, and yeah, I mean, I think defensively, I don't know if they replace Mac or if they go somewhere else along that front, maybe instead of in the linebacking area. It just depends on what they have and at what position. But I think defensively, I think they'll definitely they'll go that route
Right. I
with those first
agree. Yeah.
two. Yeah,
I I think that there will be multiple options for them at both picks in the first round. Um,
yeah,
you know, again, they are my adopted AFC team now.
yeah.
So go Raiders. All right.
The Raiders. Yeah.
So we move to the final team. And then we'll just do some
Yes.
final thoughts.
Our Super Bowl champ, Kansas City Chiefs.
Kansas City Chiefs. You know, they are in a position where it is totally to build some depth. I would like to say that they should probably get a receiver because I'm not high on their actual receiving core. Yes, they
Right.
won the Super Bowl. When you have somebody like Patrick Mahomes throwing you the ball, Frankenstein could have caught some of those passes. Um, you know, so I'd like to see them get a receiver, but I don't think they will. At that point, I think they'll address that later in the draft. Um, they're kind of all over the board. Everything I read, everything I look at, I mean, we got offensive linemen, linebackers, defensive tackles, running backs,
Right.
you name it, they're a candidate for it. Because of
Right.
all that, and you're the defending Super Bowl champs, I think they trade out. They trade back,
Yeah.
get a couple more picks, again, build depth, um, and and try to keep this run going as long as they can, because eventually you're going to have to pay Patrick Mahomes. And once you do that, you're going to lose guys.
Right.
So you need to have young guys that can come in, develop, and be ready to play in the next year or two, um, because you're not going to be able to keep every single body on your roster.
Yeah. There's no one guy that stands out that people are saying that they're coveting such and such. They signed a running back and they signed a corner and they signed a couple people in free agency. So I mean, if they have a need, maybe defensively, but again, that's just really more all the way across the board, adding some depth. And yeah, I agree. I could easily see them trading out of that spot for somebody who might want to jump in and get a specific player that they had their eye on, and then just build some depth in that case. I think that's the smart move for them to do. Whether they'll do that or not, I'm not sure, but I think that's the smart move for them to do.
Right? And I agree. I agree with all that.
Yeah, yeah,
So that takes us to the end of our draft primer.
right.
We've gone through every team. Um, again, we will be doing our mock draft next week. If you would like to be part of that mock draft, go to our website that's in our bio and send us a message,
Yep.
and we will get in touch with you to come on and make a selection for your team during our mock draft next week. So uh, we'll do that, and then we will update our website with our picks on our on the mock draft page. So um, we would. I'm sure we are not going to agree on every pick. I sure hope not, because that would
Oh,
be a
I wouldn't
boring.
think so.
That would be one boring mock draft. I will say that.
Yes, it
Um,
would be.
and we'll just see. We'll see. We'll have a good conversation again. Um, it is going to be what we think teams are going to do, not what they should do. We are
Right.
trying to predict what they are going to do, not what they should do. I might throw my opinion in there that this is what they're going to do, but I don't think they should do it
Right.
because I have my own opinions on a lot of this stuff.
Well, as
But
we've talked about throughout all of our draft primers in all the shows that we have had, we've said many times this is what teams should do. It's probably not what they're going to do, but this is what they should do. Um, but sometimes they align, sometimes they're not going to. Yeah, in this case, we're going to try to predict what they will do as best as possible, and hopefully we can get at least a couple of them right. So
right, yeah,
yeah,
I think we will. Um,
yeah,
I think a couple of these picks are pretty set in stone already.
right,
Um, this is going to be the most interesting draft we've had, though, because they have not been able to have pro days. They haven't been able to have one-on-one interviews, face-to-face interviews with people.
right. It's all
So,
virtual stuff. Yeah,
and I know there's a couple of teams that say they want to add rounds to the draft, and because of it, that's like, let's not go that far. So,
yeah, no,
um, but we will see. And hopefully, we the draft will give us some normalcy. Um,
right. Something to focus on in the sports world. So, yep, I think that'll
so
be helpful.
yeah, I think that'll be helpful to everybody, and then they'll give us something to talk about. And hopefully until things start opening up again. Um, so, Lone Wolf, do you have anything else to add before we sign off for the night?
No, I think this is a good place for us. We made it through every team, every division. I'm really looking forward to the draft. I'm going to do a lot of homework on this. I really feel like we could do a good job on this one. Not that we're going to get everything right, but we don't get paid to get everything right, so we'll
No,
do the best that we can and just have some fun with it.
right. We're gonna have fun with it. Like you said, we don't get paid for this. We do it because we enjoy doing it.
Right.
And um, you know, kind of give some different varying opinions. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm not worried about offending anybody.
Yeah.
Um, because you know what? I've said it before, and I'll say it again.
Yeah.
A lot of GMs and coaches around the NFL are idiots. And how they continue to have a job, I do not know. Um, you know, it blows my mind. But that will do it for our NFL draft primers.
It will.
Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, have a good night. And again, if you'd like to be part of our mock draft show next week, visit our website and send us an email, and we will be in touch. Again, have a good night. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Sounds good.